Hi, Emilio.
Hey, Gabriel, how are you, my man?
How's it going?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Oh, can't complain. Everything's been really good.
Hey, Gabriel, how's it going? This is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
So, Gabriel, man, it's been a long time coming. We've been talking we've been going back and forth for a while when I had in between rounds. Now it's 2.5 fighters. I got Chris Fusco with me. Julian Fusco at the moment is in New York. He just finished watching UFC 244. Can't wait for those gossips.
Oh, nice.
But, man, I'm so happy that we finally got you on the show. You are one of the most declarated kickboxers on the planet Earth. You are actually still champ and exploring the MMA world, man. What's going on with you?
It's kickboxing is my passion, but I've always had that sort of wondering, like, if I would have tried MMA, what would have happened? And it always just seemed like, trying to do both sports while I was trying to get that glory belt or trying to get the Bellator belt was just too much of a risk because the priority was kickboxing, and I've heard so many people say you can't do both disciplines really, really well, especially when you're climbing the ranks. So, I've kind of looked back about 6 months ago and went, you know what, I think I've pretty much accomplished everything I wanted to in kickboxing, and that's not to say that I want to stop fighting, but I think I can take some of that energy that usually went 100% to kickboxing and put it into developing a little bit of a ground game, and then just experimenting with MMA, a couple fights a year, just in between the kickboxing ones.
So now that you're the current featherweight champion for Glory, and that's one of the hardest titles that anyone could get. You see a lot of guys who are champions in MMA. For example, Israel Adesanya, he was getting flatline in Glory. Glory is one of the greatest strikers on planet Earth, which you are the current featherweight champion in. So you transitioning to MMA now. It's like, because you're a champion, it's a lot of high risk, high reward. Are you really gonna go back and forth with MMA, or you just want to try out a couple and then just focus 100% on kickboxing?
I think I'll go back and forth, and there's a couple of reasons. The first one being that it's just very difficult to stay 100% busy with kickboxing. It's just there's not enough fights unless I want to go to compete in China. And I've tried that before, but there's downsides to that. The travel is definitely one of them. It's big, long trips. But have had a couple of experiences over in China where I wasn't treated very well. And I just, I wasn't going on. Everything's fair and neutral between the fighters. And as soon as you experience that, you start to question the organization and sort of the integrity behind it. So, I had two options. And, do I want to fill my time and my extra energy output with MMA, or do I want to go and fight in China? And there's just no way to really move up by going to China and fighting. You make some money, but it doesn't really do much else for my career. So I think going back and forth between kickboxing and MMA will be the goal. In 2020, I'm hoping for 2 kickboxing fights and possibly 2 MMA fights. So it would be really nice to be very busy, because you have that nice training camp where you can get 9-10 weeks in, and then you can take a month off approximately and sort of juggle that throughout the year. Whereas in the past, or even like quite recently, I had a kickboxing fight December 2018, and I didn't get another one until October 2019. So you start getting those 10-month gaps in between, and that's a big downtime when I've spent over a decade trying to build up my career so I could make some good money. So I think it'll be a challenge jumping back and forth between the disciplines, but I'm up for it.
Okay. Hey, Gabriel, this is Chris here. I had a question for you. We had a similar question a couple days ago when we interviewed Mark Hunt. Since he was also he fought in kickboxing as well as in MMA, and more in MMA in his later years. For you, since you've been successful at both, for the longest time, a lot of kickboxers, and boxers actually for that matter, were criticizing the striking in MMA, saying that there's a lot that's lacking, a lot of techniques that aren't being utilized. Someone who's done both, and you've been successful at both so far, in your opinion, is there anything lacking in the striking in mixed martial arts in 2019?
That's a good question. I don't know if I would necessarily say lacking. There are some things that are not utilized as much, but there's a reason for that. And for example, I did notice and will try to take advantage of body shots within MMA, and that's something that I was able to utilize in my last fight that really worked well for me. But I do understand that, one little mistake. I just did a seminar yesterday. I was trying to explain to the group the reason most people are hesitant on body shots is it opens your head up. That's just the nature of it, right? Mm-hmm. So getting hit with a 10-ounce glove is not nearly as severe as getting hit with the 4-ounce. So you're probably a little more hesitant to open your head up. And then also because the thumb is exposed on an MMA glove, it seems like it's a lot easier to damage your hand. Even I noticed that
makes sense.
The first couple of times I did sparring with the little 7-ounce sort of hybrid gloves, I clipped my thumb a couple of times and went, oh man, I didn't really think about that element. Yeah. So those two things in there do make certain things more difficult, and that's just for one little shot there. But I wouldn't say it's limited. It's just you have to realize what works and what doesn't for the different sport. And that's just something that, you're changing up to 4-ounce gloves. You're worried about the takedowns. The striking's not going to be quite as complete, I would say, as maybe boxing or kickboxing, but there's so much more to know for MMA, so really you have to change up your striking style.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes complete sense. There is the threat of the takedown there. And people tend to headhunt more in MMA. It just seems like it. And I think I really agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, I'd love to see more body shots. I mean, I think Aldo, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3 fights ago, but
Jeremy Stevens,
that's it, and that was fantastic. And I was just going, oh, that's amazing, because you don't see it that often. And with those little gloves, I got hit with a couple in training camp because I did a lot of my sparring with my kickboxing partners. So we just put on the small gloves and did our striking with those little gloves. So I still got tagged like a kickboxer because those guys were throwing lots of body shots. I was just going, wow, this is unpleasant. This is so much smaller. And that was a 7-ounce glove. Yeah, so if we can get down to a 4-ounce and I can start utilizing some body shots, I think it could be great. So it'll definitely be a primary goal of mine within the fights.
Okay, perfect.
Well, being such a seasoned kickboxer, who do you think of the great strikers? And you can answer that both your top 3 in kickboxing, you do your top 3 in MMA. Who do you think is one of your idols or guys that you really look up to in both aspects of the striking game?
I mean, in the kickboxing, it's super easy because I've had so many guys for years that I basically developed my whole style and pretty much all my training around, and that was all the K1 Max champions from, I'd say, back in 2002 to 2008 when it was just in its heyday, and they had 4 champions, Masato, Albert Kraus, Bokau, and Andy Sauer.
Of course.
Yeah, and I say all those guys probably did as much as anybody for my career just because I would sit down and watch their fights and study them and then go to the gym and try what they tried, and you disregard some things because they don't work for your style or your body type, but you just learn so much by watching fights if you really go into the gym and try things after. So yeah, those guys for kickboxing for me were just such an integral part of growing. And then for the MMA, and in terms of striking, generally, I'm going to always like the guys like Aldo and McGregor and Adesanya just because they have that kickboxing sort of style where they focus on the stand-up. But yeah, what I'm trying to do now actually more is watch the MMA fights with the guys who are not strikers. Because at some point I'm going to get to somebody who's not a striker. Realistically, for the first number of fights, I've been told Bellator just said, you know what, we're gonna put you up against strikers. But at some point, that's going to change, and they're going to put me against a guy who's primarily going to try and take me down the whole fight. And I'm trying to watch the fights and utilize the learning tools there.
Yeah. Sure.
And that's something also, we see it happening a couple of times, and we've seen, well, not too many times, we've seen it happen with Gokhan Saki, we've seen it happen with, who else? I think Joe Schilling, who also, it happens sometimes where kickboxers end up getting knocked out by far less strikers and their level. That seems, I think it really goes off to what you just said, that it is really wise of you to be keeping track of fighters who aren't only strikers in MMA, because anything can happen, as you already know.
Yeah, that's a good point there, because I've noticed that too. You know, you see these, like Gokhan Saki, such a high-level kickboxer.
Exactly. Yeah, we were shocked. Yeah,
shocked. Yeah, but I mean, the big thing about those guys, and I might be wrong, but just from watching, I don't see them doing a big change in their style from one sport to the other. And I tried to dramatically change my style. I changed my stance. I changed my hand positioning. I noticed right away as soon as I sparred the first day. I went in with one of my sparring partners who's a boxer, and normally I can keep my 16-ounce gloves up and take most of them off the forearms. And for the first time I sparred with the 7-ounce gloves, he was just lighting me up because I was trying to fight the way I normally fight. And I just went, okay, well, that's not going to work. So the few times I've watched those guys, I went, I would like to see you guys switch your striking style just a little bit.
Yeah, tweak it a bit. Yeah,
tweak it just on the defense aspect, because their offense is, it's amazing. It's just that defense, and it's hard to fault them because those gloves are small, and one little mistake and you're going to get clipped. But that'll be my goal. I don't want to get hit with those gloves. I don't want to take lots of punishment in my career. That's always a goal of mine. I want to put on exciting fights, but I want to avoid coming out with concussions, and I don't want to get KO'd. So I'm going to be always. I saw something McGregor posted the other day. He was, I don't know why or what the reference was, but he's just basically in his Instagram post ripping apart the whole everybody in MMA, saying you guys don't work on your defense enough.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
Yeah, that's basically going to be the goal of my MMA training camps, is defense with a 4-ounce glove on and defense from the takedowns. That's it. Mm-hmm. If I can't make my striking work, just by making a few small changes, that's a problem. Right? I have to add some elbows in aside from that striking. But the defense is the big aspect that I have to work on, and I think all kickboxers, if you're transitioning, will have to work on.
Yeah, okay. All right. Speaking, you said a couple of the names from the UFC already. Last night, UFC 244 went down at Madison Square Garden. Main event, Jorge Masvidal took on Nate Diaz. A little anticlimactic in the ending. First of all, did you watch that event?
I did watch it, yeah.
Okay, what were your thoughts on that ending stoppage due to cut?
As a fan, it's disappointing, and especially when you know what Diaz is capable of and how tough he is. All those guys, just anybody at the top level is a tough guy. Mm-hmm. But I'm like I said before about avoiding too much damage in fights. I'm all about fighter safety, and even from the TV, you don't really see the danger. And I think it was Dominic Cruz was saying that you just don't know how many more it takes until something really can happen to your eye and you get damaged. So I always think it's smart to just bow out before you get really, really injured, something that could be career ending. And I had to do that in one of my fights when I fought Robin Van Roosmalen, and that's like it's the one time in my career where I look back, I'm like, you know what, I got beat up that fight, I lost that fight, there's no excuses, and we came out of the 4th round, and my brother just said to me, can you KO him in the next round? And I went, I can't. He's too strong, he's too big. I've hit him with some shots, it's not happening. And then my brother said, okay, I want to stop it, because if you can't KO him, you can't win, and we don't need to keep your ego uplifted, just like, I finished the fight. Let's just bow out and say, you know what, it wasn't your night. And if sometimes the doctor has to take over and do that to keep Diaz safe, I think it's a smart call.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm a little torn between the two also, because as a fan, I'm like, come on, that's when Diaz really turns it up in the 4th and the 5th. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's like Masvidal I didn't really see Masvidal change anything up in that 4th and 5th round. He didn't seem too tired. He hit Nate with a lot of body shots. I can't expect, no matter what, couldn't have imagined Masvidal, getting finished in that 4th. I know everyone's saying, Diaz, that's when he turns it up, but I don't know. Masvidal wasn't going anywhere. That's the way I looked at it. But I'm torn also. I'm torn.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, what are the two outcomes? Diaz manages to pull off some miraculous, most likely submission, because I can't imagine at that point he was going to KO him. And then, or the other option is, Diaz gets so beat up that he's in the hospital for weeks, or it's a high-ending career, and it just seems like you edge on the side of being smarter, even if it's disappointing to the fans. So I sympathize with him, and he didn't want the fight to stop, but you have to respect the doctor sometimes.
Okay. All right, Nils.
Well, right about now, this is our favorite segment of any show. We call it the lightning round. We ask you either some kickboxing questions, MMA questions, or questions that make entirely no sense to the show. But we love doing it. And Chris, let's make it happen. Let's make some magic happen.
All right, I got the first one. So, being fellow Canadians here, there's the battle of the ages, as we call it, between Dunkin' Donuts and Tim Hortons. Which would you prefer?
Oh my gosh, I haven't had a donut in about a decade, but I'll go with Tim Hortons. I'll go with Tim Hortons just because it's the Canadian one. I don't drink coffee either. I haven't had coffee in my whole life.
Oh, no, you've never tried coffee?
No, I've never had caffeine or alcohol or anything. Yeah, it was always like since 16. It's just like keep the body as healthy as I can because I want to win.
Well, you're better than most. That's something we should all take from.
Well, that's why he has a world title and we don't.
Exactly.
Those are the steps you need to follow to be a world champion.
That's it. That's why we're the ones asking the questions to him.
Well, I don't think caffeine has anything to do. Not having caffeine has anything to do with being a world champion, but whatever.
All right.
Question number 2. We got favorite martial arts movie and martial arts actor.
Oh, I gotta go with Bloodsport. I know it's a corny one, but it's something that I grew up on.
My favorite.
Yeah, I grew up on it, and I'd probably go with Van Damme too. Even though it's goofy and everything, he had Kickboxer, he had Bloodsport, he had Lionheart, like all movies that when we were younger we just watched. I even when I was around 16 learned how to do his big jumping split kick. Can't do it anymore, but. And I could actually do the one where I go into the splits in between the chairs, just because I wanted to learn how to do it. So yeah, definitely those two.
Okay, I got the next one. I got the next Canadian question. Also, once again, being a Canadian, are you a hockey fan?
I don't watch too much hockey, actually. No, I've mostly been immersed in fight sports.
Okay, so no other sports, just fighting?
Fighting, yeah, that's pretty much. I recently got into watching surfing of all sports.
Cool.
Just because my brother and I go surfing a little bit up in Tofino, which is a little surf town. But yeah, those are only kickboxing, boxing, MMA, and then surfing. That's all I watch.
Honestly, I can't say anything negative about that because I agree. I don't watch any other team sports, just fighting. So. Go ahead, Nils.
Well, now after this Masvidal win, and you were talking about McGregor, if Masvidal would fight McGregor, who do you think would take that bout?
Oh,
that's a tough one.
Yeah, that is. I don't know if McGregor could get it done. I never want to, because so many times I've been like, oh, he's done. He can't win this fight, and then he wins it. I've done that so many times. McGregor, he can't beat Aldo. He can't beat this guy. He can't beat that guy, and he beats him. So he's amazing. But yeah, at least from what I saw last night, and it's never the best idea to judge two fighters based on them competing against one other guy. Like, this guy beat this guy in this way, but he had a lot more trouble against Diaz than Masvidal did. I mean, I thought he looked great last night, and he's so powerful, and he looked more like a natural 170 than Diaz. Diaz is not a 170 fighter, so I think it would be a very very hard fight for McGregor unless he landed the shot in the first round.
Okay. Who do you think Conor should fight, actually, in his next fight? Is there someone you think would be like a little nice tune-up fight? I know the UFC doesn't really do many tune-up fights. It's more of something they do in boxing, but is there someone you think would be a good challenge for him in his next bout?
I mean, they've talked a lot about him versus Cowboy, or him versus, what's the Canadian dude? Gassy, something like that.
Gaethje.
Gaethje, yeah. I mean, they've talked about those two guys, and I think those are both fine fights for him. At the beginning, I think the Cowboy one would honestly be a safer fight.
Yeah, I think so.
He'd probably do fairly well in that one. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they announced. But yeah, I would like to see him rematch Dustin Poirier. If I had to choose, if I was like, you get to do anything for the next one, I would go Poirier or Holloway. If I was matchmaking and I could make his next fight.
It's a great fight, yeah. Great fights. Okay, and our last question for me is, by any chance, are you a gamer? Interested in gaming, video games?
I do a little bit, not too much, but some.
Okay. Do you have a favorite game, or?
The only one that I've actually really ever played that much was just Call of Duty, because my buddy and I, at the end of the week, I've never done any gaming by myself, or it's just me, but we'd get together. I'd be exhausted, and most people want to go out and do stuff on Friday night, but my whole life has been Friday night to sit down and watch fights, or we would sit down and play Call of Duty together, and then we could still catch up and chat, and I didn't have to be out and about wearing off energy. So that's my gaming experience.
Okay, hey Bellator and Glory, we need to get a video game with them so people can pick you.
That'd be the best game ever.
Yeah.
They had an old school K1 game way back in the day. I can't remember which platform it was for.
I think like Dreamcast or something. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, okay. I just remember seeing that. I think I played it one time. Somebody somehow got their hands on it, and that was back when I was just, Peter Arts and all those guys. I think it was for the heavyweights, and it wasn't the best game in terms of being able to throw what you want to throw and all that kind of defense, but I just remember thinking it was the most awesome thing ever.
Nice. Okay.
So pretty much we got a last question, a little Bellator question. Chandler versus Henderson 2 in Japan. We gotta ask you more picks because you're one of the most intelligent fighters in the game, and we just have to ask you this one.
Oh boy. MMA is not my strong suit, so I could easily be wrong, but I've watched a lot more of Michael Chandler than I have Henderson, and he just looks like a physical, such a specimen.
Yeah,
such a beast. So, without knowing too much about Henderson's ground game, I would assume if it's a striking game that Chandler will just be such a force. So I would give the edge to him, but I'm definitely more of I have more knowledge in kickboxing, so for the MMA, I wouldn't take my word for it. But I'd give the edge to Chandler.
So if we talk about some picks, then let's go into the Glory world. And what about Rico versus Bada here? That fight is going to be the rematch. I know the first one didn't really go as we all expected, but this one, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, that's right up my alley. We're going to take a lot of people off with what I say next. So many people are Badr fans. They love him. And I understand he is an exciting guy to watch. Yeah. But technically and consistency-wise, I would not say he's a top fighter when people are talking best of all time. Because I've seen so many times where just random posts on Facebook, who's the best fighter of all time? And Badr's at the top of the list just because he's getting all the votes. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Have you watched kickboxing? If you don't have Petrosian at the top of that list, you don't know the sport. Yeah. It's just there's only one guy who has a 70-2 record or something, whatever the heck he's at now. And he's the best. And Rico is just such a smart fighter for heavyweight. He doesn't engage the way that most guys do. He just comes in, he's a thinker, he'll pick you apart, and I think that's what Badr really doesn't like. Badr wants to sit and exchange, and Remy Bonjanski did a great job against Badr the first time they fought, just not engaging with him in the way he wanted, and he gets very frustrated when you don't do that. So I would assume that Rico will come with that game plan. Just smart, pick him apart. Do you guys know if it's 3 or 5 rounds?
I believe it's 5.
Five
rounds.
5 rounds, or should it be 5?
I'll have to double check.
Yeah, hopefully
it's 5.
Hopefully it is.
Travesty.
Yeah,
because,
I'm pretty sure it's
5. 5, okay, that would be great, because I think last time it was just 3. I was a little disappointed with that, because I think the longer it goes, the more chance Rico has of winning and possibly getting a KO. But those first rounds, because Badr's just so strong and he's just so explosive. But I got to go with Rico just because he is the better kickboxer.
Mm-hmm. And we got another one. It wasn't really planned in the lightning round, but we just got to ask because we've been talking about this with MMA, with Bellator, and obviously us we're big Glory fans. Myself and Chris, that's where we started from. We started from kickboxing, karate, so we love the striking game more than anything. But you don't hear Glory getting tossed around often. Obviously you have UFC, Bellator, even one championship is coming. And all the guys from Glory are going into one. You have, what's his name? I can just go down a list with Holskin is now in one. In Bellator,
Nicky Holskin,
Joe Shielings, you're going in one in Bellator. Why do you think that Glory is not getting that recognition as much as these other promotions?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I was so thrilled to sign with Glory initially. It was like a dream come true, but, unfortunately, the longer I stayed with them, the more holes I saw sort of in their business plan, and I feel like the big thing that you have to do to create a fanfare, basically, is you have to connect the fans to the fighters. You have to make sure that they actually have a personal investment in the fighter.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare, at least for me, where I'll be going, I want to watch this fight this weekend, and I don't know something about the fighter. Whether it's their story, where they were brought up from, the behind the scenes, and Glory missed out on all that initially. They didn't do any of those behind the scene things, and now they have implemented a couple of those pre-fight sort of videos, but they don't really do a good job of telling the fighter's story. And I always think that's going to be a massive, massive asset to the promotion. Let's say those embedded videos that UFC.
Yeah, they're really good at that.
Yeah, 24/7 for HBO. Those are just money ways to just get the fans and get the pay-per-view up. So they missed out on that. And then just more recently, I just feel like they've kind of stagnated with the roster of fighters. That's the one thing that UFC, I think, is really good at. They're very cutthroat. Somebody's there, and you don't perform, and you're gone. And there's just a number of people who I don't feel really should be in the top 10 in Glory anymore, and there's lots of guys out there who probably deserve the opportunity. So I would like to see a lot of those guys. Unfortunately, you have to move on to new people who can get the wins, and they made the mistake, obviously big mistake, of letting all their top fighters, but they let a lot of good fighters go to other promotions. And I know for a fact it was over a small amount of money. It's not like the fighters were demanding double amount. It's like we're talking thousands of dollars or 10% more for your fight purse. And how do you lose Israel Adesanya and Joe Schilling and Raymond Daniels and just these guys who are just spectacular athletes who always put on a fight, and those are the guys you need. And when you start losing those guys, it hurts the promotion. So I'd like to see them explode. I mean, I'm not with them anymore, but I'd like to see them explode. But I don't know if it's going to happen now that they have, like you said, snatching up the kickboxers they got other promotions that are just are paying better and building the fighters more.
Yeah, that's something also I've never really understood. MMA fans in general, whether they're really into the sport or they're just there for the big fights, everyone tends to really enjoy stand-up fights, two strikers when they're fighting. That's something why, I guess, Jorge Masvidal and Diaz was so popular, and a lot of fights in that caliber, they tend to enjoy the striking more. They love knockouts. That's what Glory's all about. That's a sport based just on striking. It's kickbox. So I always found it really hard to understand why, and that's something Joe Rogan brings up a lot on his podcast. Why isn't Glory more popular? And he said, actually, he keeps saying he thinks it's because of what Dana White said a while ago, that a lot of the fans are turned off from kickboxing based on those old, on ESPN, the 90s, those PTA karate tournaments where with the long pants where they weren't, actually that's what myself and Emilio started in, where they weren't able to kick below the kneecap, and he thinks that kind of like rubbed people the wrong way and turned them off. I'm not sure, obviously, but
it could be. I mean, I think it's just a lot of times it's just timing in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to everything with my ability to get with Glory, K1 and Glory and Bellator. There's a certain amount of luck and a certain amount of timing there, and I just happened to hit the right moment where they were searching for people at my weight class. And same thing, I think, for the UFC, they just happened to get that explosion at that right time and kind of made it very difficult for anybody else around, especially other sports. And it's just very hard for kickboxing to follow up that. You have so many MMA fans, everybody knows UFC, and most people in the fight world know Bellator, and now most people know ONE, and it's very hard to break through, I think. So I think it was just timing, personally. If it would have been reversed and Glory would have been there 10 years earlier, it could have been entirely different, but the way it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. Like the top guys in Glory, yourself, Holskin. I know a couple of guys had to retire because it was insane. But as a fan, like when you saw the tournaments that you fought twice a night, like I know it's grueling for fighters, but like for us, like us hardcores, like you mentioned, like Bloodsport. Like that's the stuff like fighters kind of live through. Like let's go through this tournament. Let's be a champion. And now that you're a champion in Bellator, like are you kind of mad that you knew the potential Glory could have been, but didn't hit that
live up to it?
Yeah, just like Bellator or UFC.
Oh, that's hard to say. I mean, I'm really nothing but grateful towards Glory. I mean, I know they have their issues, and it's too bad it hasn't grown. But really, at the end of the day, I mean, I had one fight with K1, and that was really my big break. But they still gave me the big opportunity. So, yeah, it didn't explode, and it would have been great if I was a superstar there. But I'm still so grateful to them and everything they've done. And no, I mean, I don't have anything negative about them in that sense. I'm grateful, and it led to Bellator for me and allowed me to become like what I was always a pro fighter with Glory, but now I say I finally feel like a pro fighter, a fighter who can make money and is actually getting paid. And without Glory, that wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, still happy with them.
Well, before we let you go, we just want to know, is there a fight already in the making for you?
Lined up?
What's going on? Can you give us some little gossip of what's going on for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do too much because I don't want Bellator to get upset at me, but I do know that I don't have a kickboxing fight again. It was only 3 weeks ago, so I won't have another one in probably for another six months approximately. Okay. And I'm going to fill the time in between with MMA. I don't have an exact date yet, but I know sometime in the early New Year, sometime sort of
interesting
February, March. So yeah, it was actually perfect timing because I'll have that ability to, rest up a little bit for another couple of weeks and then have sort of a nice 3.5, 4 month training camp to get the jiu-jitsu going again. And then still enjoy Christmas too. Cause
of course,
as a fighter, sometimes you don't get to enjoy Christmas. So I'll be in training camp then, but not deep enough in where I can't enjoy it. So yeah, get Christmas, get back to the MMA. The last fight for me was, you've done, I think, 39 kickboxing fights now, and then the one MMA fight. And the one MMA fight was just going back to my very first fight. I was so scared and so nervous. Yeah. And I'm sure for the next one I will be too. I'm sure it won't be too much different. I'll still be just not wanting to lose and really worried about all the other aspects. But it's fun to have the challenge and to do something different and to perform in front of a new crowd, right? Because like we said, only kickboxing fans watch kickboxing. It's nice to show some of the MMA fans some kickboxing striking.
Yeah, and how are you? Have you taken a liking to the ground game? How's that been for you?
I wouldn't say a liking so much. Because I really like Thai clinch work. Okay. So I actually really like the wrestling element, and especially the cage, wrestling against the cage. That surprisingly for me, I went over to train with Tristan Connolly and Bibiano Fernandez over in Vancouver. Yeah. And nice. Tristan just had his UFC debut, and I'm sure his name's exploded now, but yeah, when I was over there before, it was just coming up, and he was just saying, one of the big under-trained things in MMA is cage wrestling.
Yeah, I agree with
so many people don't do it, and he's like, we specialize in that here, so wow. I did some work with him, and he was just showing me as quick as he could, basically in one session, here's the basics of what you need to know, and that for me was really fun, really exciting. Being on my back is not something that I love yet. Maybe it'll come as I become more proficient in it and I start to maybe get some submissions down. But for right now, I'm just basically on my back trying to learn how to get back up. And for the wrestling part, I actually do enjoy the takedowns and do enjoy my back or my opponent's back against the cage. So that's fun and exciting for me.
Great. All right. Well, look, Gabriel, we just want to tell you it's been an honor to speak to you. You're an excellent ambassador for the sport. You're representing Canada well, and I think you have a really bright future in MMA, and you've already had an amazing past in kickboxing, and we wish you all the best. We really thank you for this interview.
Well, thanks so much, guys. It was great being on the show.
Yeah, man. I know we were going back and forth a while, but finally getting you on, man, it's a blessing. You're a true friend to us. And hey, man, who knows? After that Badahari fight, maybe you could break it down for us, and you could finally get an opponent, and we could discuss breakdowns on that one.
That would be great.
That'd be fun. Let's do it. Just once we get a little closer, hit me up, and we'll talk about it after the fact.
Let's make it.
All right,
brother.
perfect. Thank
all right,
you,
have a good day, guys.
Have a good day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.